18 have been killed as Syrian rebels bomb Christian suburb of Damascus. Car bomb tore through crowded intersection. Another car bomb attack has torn through the mostly Christian Damascus suburb of Jaramana today, killing at least 18 people, including 3 children, and wounding scores of others. They said here that the bomb detonated in a crowded intersection of the suburb, setting a 4-story building on fire and also destroying a nearby passenger bus. They said it's a fair bet it was one of the Islamist-motivated factions. They said they've shown particular interest in attacking Syria's religious minorities, accusing them of being pro-Assad while simultaneously carrying out a campaign of violence that virtually guarantees that they would prefer Assad to the rebellion. There's also another explosion in Yarmouk refugee camp. And also, so far, the toll in that bombing remains unclear, and the camp remains contested. Egyptian killed preparing explosives in Daria. Map found for future targets. An Egyptian was killed while a Syrian and another Egyptian were gravely wounded Sunday when explosive devices were preparing detonation at the house in Mount Lebanon's town of Daria. So we talked about the 50 individuals that were executed at gunpoint by the rebels recently. We also covered this disturbing report alleges killing of 450 Kurds in Syria. But they've been unconfirmed. Reports have emerged detailing a new massacre in which 450 Kurds, including 120 children, were allegedly slaughtered by al-Qaeda-linked rebels fighting against the Syrian government. The al-Nusra militants and other rebel forces surrounded the village. The relative of one Kurdish attack victim told RT they started going door to door, entering every house. If there were any men, they killed them and took women and children hostage. Russia's Foreign Minister Lavrov said that the UN must condemn terrorist attacks in Syria without reservations. It says here the recent developments in Syria make more urgent the G8 summit call on the Syrian government and the opposition to unite in order to fight terrorists and expel them from the country. Also, he warned that the so-called Free Syrian Army will focus on a war of attrition in case some parties continue to incite the Syrian opposition to overthrow the regime, which is in the interest of al-Nusra or al-Qaeda and other terrorists who do not hide their goals aimed at establishing a Salafate or Emirate in the Levant. This is Global Government News. My website is ggnonline.net, and on YouTube my channels are ddarko 2012 and ddarko 2013. And moving on, killing of Kurds in Syria, not genocide, but a proxy war for power in the region. This is what a German journalist told RT. Al-Qaeda slaughtering hundreds of Kurds in Syria is a struggle for power in the region, as Al-Qaeda's wannabe Islamic State will not tolerate any other power there. Says what we see is happening on the Syrian battlefield has nothing to do with something like a civil war. It's very clear that it's a proxy war. What we see here, it has nothing to do with popular uprisings against the Syrian government. It says the Syrian battleground is somehow a hotspot for jihadists, for criminals, for terrorists from all over the world who join Islamism, fighting groups who join especially the Nusra Front in their fight for establishing a sort of al-Qaeda state, especially in northern Syria. They say for the Kurdish population, it's a dangerous situation. Because they usually want to have political autonomy and self-defense, but if there's an al-Qaeda state or an Islamic state, it said it is not a state, that is a sort of entity that will not tolerate any other power there. Then I see this question, should we expect any international reaction to the allegations of genocide against Kurds in Syria? This is what they got Saddam Hussein from after the United States supplied him with the weapons to use on the Kurds. Is that it seems like, again, just like I mentioned before, the Lee Kaplan Zionist individual making the point about the Kurds just prior to this happening, basically kind of let me know that this is where they were going to go, and then they ended up going this direction. So, I mean, there's been massacres that have been carried out inside Syria, and the international community hasn't said anything. In the last article, they were talking about, the international community is now up in arms. Well, the United States hasn't said anything. Of course, they're backing these Islamists or this Al-Qaeda group. It's basically a mercenary force, and they keep calling it Islamic. But many of these individuals or these fighters are foreigners who are being paid. They're basically paid mercenaries and drug addicts, and they've been accused of not even being Muslims. And we just talked about recently about balkanization of Syria, basically breaking into 3 states. You have the Kurds, one to the east and the north, Actually, more to the east than to the north, you have these Al-Qaeda terrorists occupying, basically foreigners occupying northern Syria, and then you have the Alawite Shiite Assad government type factions down there in the south, Damascus. CIA official: Syria poses greatest threat to United States security. The war in Syria poses the greatest threat to U.S. security because of the risk of the government falling and the country becoming a weapons-rich haven for Al-Qaeda. Again, this is all planned. You can tell it's the same thing, Libya redux and that, and Iraq redux. So here we go. It's all happening again. And the U.S. and the U.K. and all these countries that are screaming how worried they are about Al-Qaeda getting in there have been funding these individuals, training and supporting them to carry out these atrocities. So never mind the fact that I've said this probably about 1 million times among, also other people have too, analysts, at least analysts that are telling the truth, which is they're just going according to a Brookings Institute policy for regime change against the Assad government. So that's exactly what they wanted, the United States and the terrorists, Al-Qaeda. So that's why the United States, these democratic nations, these civilized nations, have been working along side by side with Al-Qaeda and terrorists to bring down Assad's government and Syria. It's pretty funny, this CIA second in command said that there are now more foreign fighters flowing into Syria each month. Well, actually, the whole time there were 90%, according to German intelligence, 90% plus fighters in Syria from the beginning were actually foreigners. So they never were actually regular Syrians. About less than 10% were actually Syrians. The Syrian government's weapons are going to be up for grabs and up for sale as they were in Libya. Oh, is that right? Right? Just like in the northeast, and what was it, Misrata, that all these foreigners were coming in on boats and being armed by the West. So, yeah. And now we were just talking about recently about how the CIA won't talk about what the hell they were doing there, when basically it's very well known that the CIA was there basically funneling weapons, Stinger missiles and weapons to the terrorists in Al-Qaeda before Ambassador Stevens was killed on September 11th. Of course, they used that day too for a certain reason. So this guy is a real asshole, in my personal opinion. I'm sorry I have to say that, but it's just I know I don't know exactly what's going on, but I have a pretty good grasp of what's going on. And so when I see these stories coming out with these people making these comments, again, they're insulting my intelligence and my awareness of what I've read in the last couple of years of following this. So this CIA second command says the violence in Syria that they've been creating in order to get regime change, which they said towards the fall of the government of Assad, where they're heading because that's what they want, that's their plan, has the potential to spill across the borders into Lebanon, Jordan, and Iraq. Well, let's see, Jordan has had to take in about 600,000 refugees from Syria because of what the U.S. and the U.K. have caused. Iraq, of course, they helped cause the destabilization that was already destabilized. They had the bloodiest month in July. 1,000 people were dead. On average, you get about 60 killed in a bomb blast, 150 injured about every other day now. And of course, they said that that the violence that's happening in Iraq recently is directly related to what's happening in Syria. Of course, Lebanon, same thing. So they're actually creating all the violence around there. Inside Syria and around Syria, and especially in Lebanon. They're doing that on purpose with the help of Israel. But he said the second on the list of the biggest threat was Iran. Well, of course, everything that they're doing is which path to Persia. Again, Brookings Institute. These are policies written by guys with nice ties and stuff and lots of money and cash flow. That's their goal. Iran has to do with the economy and resources. And shaping the globe the way they want to. No sovereignty for anybody. No central banks for anybody. Followed by the global Al-Qaeda threat. Well, that's not much. That's always going to be a threat, right? That's their pride. That's their own personal mercenary force. North Korea. Oh, you see, that's always got to have the boogeyman. Again, they're a sovereign state that, they don't like that either. So, and cyber warfare. So, that's internet. That's internet freedom. That's people doing what I'm doing, and other people out there trying to get some truth out there and combat all this bullshit that they put out. Defense experts question Joint Chief Chairman's views on Syria. Several international defense experts said that a recent letter from America's top military leader about the war in Syria revealed a great power wary of conflict, caution, and spending. So someone said this article was not true or something like that. But it says, anyways, I covered this before. U.S. ready to destroy Syrian air forces with 3 ships and 24 planes. So it says that there's a member of the U.S. Institute for Study of War, Christopher Hammer, said they wrote with the help of only 3 warships and 24 drones. They said that according to the expert, a limited strike will disable their air forces in Syria, but large-scale military operations will guarantee that the forces will not recover from the strike, and that he says that the missile defense system in Syria is no threat. So the S-400 missiles and whatever those kinetic weapons that they have could strike off World War III. So these people are insane. Really, they're insane. They said here that this letter reflects the dilemma the United States is facing after a decade of military action. The American military knows well that it can be no more than a part of a real solution. I like how they put this. Trying to manage the chaos in Syria that they're sowing, Dempsey said that the U.S. could control chemical weapons, i.e., the weapons that that the government has, but at least they say they don't have them. But I guess those are the chemical weapons that they're giving the terrorists to unleash on people. Establish buffer zones, no-fly zones, serve as military trainers and advisors for the rebels. That's the CIA and what they've been doing with these terrorists. Conducting limited strikes for create a no-fly zone. No-fly zone costs $1 billion a month. He says once we take action, we should be prepared for what comes next. Deeper involvement is hard to avoid. Risks include the loss of U.S. aircraft. Yeah, I'm sure the military-industrial complex will lose sleep over that. It says here in lobbyists, which would require us to insert personal recovery forces. Al-Qaeda groups lead Syrian rebels, seizure of air bases, and a sign they continue to dominate anti-Assad forces. Syrian rebels, spearheaded by Al-Qaeda in Iraq and its local allies, took control Tuesday of a crucial military airport in northern Syria, opening a vital supply line between the terrorists in the north and in Turkey, which that Turkey's been following these weapons to the terrorists since the beginning. So, rebels in Israeli uniforms fight in Syria. So, a Syrian army officer has revealed that dozens of militants of the so-called Free Syrian Army have dressed in Israeli uniforms and are fighting the government forces in Syria. Citing informed sources, the officer told Al-Alam on Monday on condition, basically secret condition, that the foreign-backed militants have been seen in different areas, including in Jobar, a village on the outskirts of Damascus. The Syrian army also found dead bodies of militants who wore Israeli uniforms, he said, adding Hebrew words have been printed inside the uniform. Says that the uniforms have also been marked by FSA tags and Al-Ghouta brigades. Using Israeli uniforms by the foreign-backed militants proves there are links to the Israeli regime, he added. And I've covered before about how they've been sent to Israeli hospitals as well. In Homs, the government seized a car loaded with amounts of weapons, including Israeli weapons and explosives, Israeli-made machine guns. Syrian army kills dozens of Al-Qaeda-linked rebels in ambush. It says the Syrian army ambushed a group of Al-Qaeda-linked fighters Wednesday east of Damascus, killing more than 60 and handing the group a setback after a string of victories this week. In Lebanon, Israeli patrol violates Lebanese border. 4 soldiers are injured. So 4 Israeli soldiers were injured in an explosion during the night after they violated the Lebanese border. When the forces asked the Israeli officer about the explosion, he said they were fireworks. They exploded after occupation soldiers were on the security mission in the Lebanese territory. For its part, the Lebanese Army Command reported the incident, saying an Israeli patrol violated Lebanese sovereignty. Then police, IDF soldier helped supply weapons used in this bombing. This was from August 6th. The charge of attempting to cause damage with an explosive device can carry alone 15 years in prison. There's a soldier in his 20s on Tuesday, along with another suspect. Joint operation carried out this bombing. So there's a career soldier suspected of supplying material to the main suspects accused of carrying out a bomb. So there was an interesting video that I watched today, actually while I was getting all this news together, was President Obama at Camp Pendleton speaking to Marines, basically. And usually when the president, they give talks and stuff, it's some kind of motivational speech, but it was really, he was just talking to them as if they were constituents, selling them, sequesterization, we got to have money to help you do your job, But the biggest thing he kept saying about was the veterans coming back, blowing up and stuff, and saying that, he was very cold about it. He was talking about how we need to spend more in research, which basically told me, one of the biggest reasons, of course, is research into robotics and stuff like that, using these guys as guinea pigs. Anyways, the meeting between Putin and Obama has been canceled. Again, I'm not sure if it's just a big show, fake standoff like the Cold War, but either way, Obama talking to Marines and stuff like that, talking about the Pacific. Who knows what's really ahead of us? So.